I found the emails on a Tuesday, not the obvious ones, not the sloppy, careless messages that amateurs leave lying around in their inboxes. These were buried 3 layers deep in an encrypted cloud storage account that Ryan thought he'd hidden behind a VPN and a company proxy server. The kind of digital fortress that would keep out 99% of people trying to find them. Unfortunately for him, I designed that fortress. My name is Julian Foster, and for the last 8 years, I've been a cloud infrastructure architect, the guy who builds the invisible scaffolding that holds entire companies together in the digital realm. I secure networks, design redundancy systems, and create data architectures that protect millions of dollars worth of information. I'm good at my job. Excellent, actually. The kind of good that means I know every backdoor, every vulnerability, every hidden pathway in any system I've ever touched. Ryan Caldwell knew this about me. We'd worked together for 6 years, been best friends for nearly 7. He'd watched me solve impossible problems, seen me pull companies back from the edge of catastrophic data breaches, celebrated with me when I built security systems that even the best hackers couldn't penetrate. He knew all of this, and he still decided to steal my wife, destroy my career, and use my own professional expertise to cover his tracks. The mistake he made, the one fatal error in his otherwise meticulous plan, was forgetting that I taught him everything he knew about digital security, every trick, every technique, every clever workaround he used to hide his affair with Sarah. I'd shown him over beers and late-night coding sessions when we were building our startup together. I was his mentor, his business partner, his brother in everything but blood. And now, sitting in the blue glow of my monitor at 3 a.m, looking at 6 months of messages between my best friend and my wife, I realized that everything I'd built, my marriage, my friendship, my company, my life, had been a carefully constructed illusion. But here's what Ryan didn't know. I'm better at destruction than I ever was at creation. And I was about to spend the next 18 months proving it. Let me take you back to the beginning. Not the beginning of the end, but the real beginning. When Ryan and I were just 2 ambitious kids with a dream and enough technical skill to be dangerous. We met at a tech conference in Seattle 7 years ago. I was 29, working as a senior network architect for a mid-sized cybersecurity firm, bored out of my mind with corporate politics and the slow grind of enterprise IT. Ryan was 28, a systems engineer at a competing firm, equally frustrated with the limitations of working for someone else. I'd just finished presenting a workshop on distributed cloud security architecture when he approached me at the bar. He was holding a craft beer and had this intense electric energy about him, the kind of person who talked with their entire body, gesturing wildly while breaking down complex technical concepts into elegant simplifications. His session on zero trust architecture was brilliant, he said, sliding onto the bar stool next to mine. But you're wrong about container orchestration in hybrid environments. I raised an eyebrow. Nobody had challenged my methodology in years. Am I? Yeah. He pulled out his phone and started sketching a diagram with his finger on a napkin. You're thinking about security as layers, which is fine for traditional infrastructure. But in containerized hybrid environments, you need to think about security as a mesh, interconnected points of verification that create redundancy without creating bottlenecks. I stared at the napkin. Then I stared at him. That's actually fucking brilliant. He grinned. I know. Buy me another beer and I'll tell you why your entire approach to API, gateway security, is about to become obsolete. We talked until 2 a.m. By the time the bartender was literally turning off the lights around us, we'd sketched out the basic framework for what would eventually become Secure Haven, a cloud security platform that would revolutionize how mid-sized companies protected their data. We should build this, Ryan said as we stood outside the hotel, the Seattle rain misting around us. Fuck working for other people. Let's build this together. I should have been skeptical. I should have done due diligence, checked his background, taken time to think it through. But there was something about Ryan that made you want to follow him into battle. He had this infectious confidence, this absolute certainty that we could change the world if we just worked hard enough. Let's do it, I said. And just like that, my life changed forever. Building Secure Haven was the hardest and most exhilarating thing I'd ever done. We spent the first 6 months working out of Ryan's cramped apartment in Portland, living on ramen and energy drinks, coding 18-hour days, sleeping on his couch in shifts so one of us could always be working. Ryan handled the business side, pitching to investors, managing relationships, crafting our marketing strategy. I focused on the technical architecture, building the actual platform, designing the security protocols, creating the infrastructure that would become our product. We were perfect complements to each other. Where I was methodical and detail-oriented, Ryan was bold and visionary. Where I got lost in the technical weeds, Ryan kept us focused on the bigger picture. Where I was cautious and risk-averse, Ryan pushed us to take chances that paid off more often than not. "You're the engine, Jules," he'd say, using the nickname he'd given me in our first month working together. "I'm just the guy making sure everyone knows how powerful that engine is." We secured our first round of seed funding 8 months in, $2.3 million from a venture capital firm in San Francisco that specialized in cybersecurity startups. It wasn't enough to make us rich, but it was enough to hire our first 3 employees, rent actual office space, and pay ourselves a barely livable salary. Ryan hired a young sales associate named Michael who'd worked with him at his previous firm. I brought on 2 junior engineers, both brilliant kids fresh out of MIT who understood distributed systems architecture better than most people with 20 years of experience. Within a year, we had our first major client, a healthcare company with 15,000 employees that needed a complete overhaul of their data security infrastructure. It was a $400,000 contract, our biggest by far, and it validated everything we'd been building. Ryan and I celebrated by getting completely drunk at a dive bar near our office, talking about where we'd be in 5 years, dreaming about IPOs and acquisition offers and changing the entire cybersecurity industry. "We're going to build something that matters, Jules," Ryan said, his words slightly slurred, his arm around my shoulders. "Something that actually protects people, not just another bullshit security theater product that gives companies a false sense of safety." "We're doing it," I agreed. "We're actually fucking doing it." "Brothers," he said, raising his glass. "Through everything, no matter what." "Brothers?" I echoed. I meant it. With everything in me, I meant it. I met Sarah 2 years into building Secure Haven. We just closed our Series A funding, $8 million that would let us scale up, hire a proper team, and start competing with the big players in the enterprise security space. Ryan had organized a celebration party at a trendy downtown Portland restaurant, inviting all our employees, investors, and a bunch of people from the local tech scene. Sarah was a friend of Michael's girlfriend, a graphic designer who worked for a boutique branding agency. She had auburn hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, green eyes that seemed to see right through whatever mask you were wearing, and a smile that made you forget whatever you were saying. I literally stopped mid-sentence when I saw her. "You okay?" Ryan asked, following my gaze. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Who is that?" He looked, then grinned. "Oh, that's Sarah. Sarah Mitchell. Michael's girlfriend knows her from college. Why?" "I need to talk to her." "Jules, you're terrible at talking to women." "I don't care." Ryan laughed and clapped me on the back. "All right, wingman duty is activated. Come on, I'll introduce you." Ryan was charming as always, making me seem far more interesting than I actually was, telling stories about our startup journey that made me sound like some kind of technical genius crossed with a daring entrepreneur. I mostly stood there awkwardly, trying not to stare at Sarah too obviously, until Ryan finally made an excuse to drift away and leave us alone. "So," Sarah said, those green eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my stomach flip. "You're the mysterious technical genius who built all of this?" "I wouldn't say genius," I managed. "Just persistent, and maybe a little obsessive." She laughed. "Michael's told me stories about you. He says you once stayed in the office for 72 hours straight fixing a critical vulnerability." 68 hours, I corrected. "And I took a 3-hour nap in the server room." "That makes it so much better." We talked for the rest of the party. She told me about her work designing brand identities for startups, about her frustration with clients who wanted her to make it pop, without understanding what that meant, about her dream of starting her own agency someday. I told her about cloud architecture and security protocols, somehow making it sound less boring than it actually was, about the pressure of building something from nothing, about the terror and excitement of risking everything on a vision. "You love it," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," I admitted. "I really do. Is that weird?" "No." She smiled. "It's attractive. Most guys I meet are either chasing money or chasing status. You're chasing something you actually care about." I asked for her number. She gave it to me. 3 days later, we had our first date at a quiet Italian restaurant where we talked until the staff started stacking chairs around us. 2 months later, she stayed over at my apartment and never really left. A year after that, I proposed to her on a beach in Oregon, the sunset painting the sky in oranges and reds, her eyes bright with tears when I asked her to marry me. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, you beautiful, brilliant, awkward man. Yes." Ryan was my best man at the wedding. He gave a speech that made everyone laugh and cry, talking about how he'd watched me transform from a closed-off workaholic into someone who'd learned to let joy into his life, how Sarah had brought out a side of me he'd never seen before. "Jules is the smartest person I know," Ryan said, raising his glass. "But Sarah is the one person who's smarter than him. She saw something in this code-obsessed hermit worth loving. To Jules and Sarah, may they have a lifetime of happiness." Sarah loved Ryan. She thought he was hilarious and charming, appreciated how he could light up any room, how he always remembered her birthday, and brought her favourite wine when he came over for dinner. They got along so naturally that sometimes I felt like the awkward third wheel in my own life, watching my wife and my best friend laugh at inside jokes I didn't quite understand. But I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. I had a business that was thriving, a best friend who was more like a brother, and a wife who made every day feel like an adventure. For 3 years, life was good. I should have known it wouldn't last. The first crack appeared on a Thursday in March, 4 years into our marriage. I'd stayed late at the office working on a critical security patch for one of our largest clients, a financial services company that had discovered a potential vulnerability in their API authentication layer. It was the kind of problem that needed to be fixed immediately, the kind of thing that could destroy a company's reputation if it leaked to the press. I got home around 11 p.m., exhausted and ready to collapse into bed. The house was dark except for the glow of Sarah's laptop in the living room. She was curled up on the couch in one of my old t-shirts, her face illuminated by the screen. "Hey," I said, dropping my bag by the door. "You're up late?" She jumped slightly, closing her laptop quickly. "Jesus."
"Jules, you scared me. Sorry." I walked over and kissed the top of her head. "What were you working on?" "Just work stuff. Client presentation for tomorrow." "At 11 p.m? You're one to talk?" She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes.
"How was your day?" I told her about the vulnerability, about the 16-hour marathon session fixing it, about Ryan's terrible jokes that kept the team's spirits up during the crisis. She listened and nodded, but there was something off about her attention, like she was hearing the words but not really processing them. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah, fine. Just tired." "Want to go to bed?" "In a bit. I need to finish this presentation." I was too exhausted to push it. I kissed her goodnight and headed upstairs, falling asleep within minutes of hitting the pillow. Looking back, that was the moment I should have paid attention. The slightly guilty look on her face when I came home, the way she'd closed her laptop so quickly, the distance in her eyes when she looked at me. But I was so focused on work, so consumed with scaling Secure Haven and managing our growing client base, that I missed it completely. The second crack came 3 weeks later. Sarah started working late more often. She'd always been dedicated to her job, but suddenly she was staying at the office until 8 or 9 p.m. several times a week. When I asked about it, she said she'd taken on a new client, a high-profile tech startup that was demanding but paid well. "It's good for my portfolio," she said. "If I can nail this project, it could lead to bigger things." I understood. I'd been there myself, grinding away at unglamorous work because it might lead to something better, so I supported her, ordered takeout on nights when she was late, did more of the household chores, tried to be the understanding husband. But then Ryan started working late, more often too. He'd always been the first one in the office and the last one out. But now he was staying until 9 or 10 p.m., sometimes not leaving until after midnight. When I asked him about it, he said he was working on a major partnership deal that could transform the company. "Confidential stuff," he said with a wink. "Can't tell you details yet, but trust me, Jules, this is going to change everything for us." I trusted him. Of course I trusted him. He was my business partner, my best friend. We'd built everything together. Why wouldn't I trust him? Looking back, I want to shake my past self. I want to scream at that naive, trusting version of me who couldn't see what was right in front of his face. But hindsight is a cruel gift that way. It shows you all the moments you could have changed everything, all the signs you ignored because you wanted so badly to believe everything was fine. The third crack came in June. We were supposed to have dinner together, me, Sarah, Ryan, and his girlfriend, Emily. It was something we did once a month, a tradition we'd started years ago to make sure we stayed connected outside of work. Ryan and Emily would come over to our place, or we'd go to theirs, and we'd cook dinner together and drink too much wine and laugh about stupid things. That night, Emily cancelled at the last minute. A family emergency, Ryan said. Her mother had fallen and broken her hip, and Emily needed to fly back to Chicago immediately. "Do you still want to come over?" Sarah asked Ryan on the phone. I was in the kitchen prepping vegetables, but I could hear her voice from the living room. "We understand if you want to take a rain check." There was a pause. "No, I'd love to come." Ryan's voice came through the speaker. "Honestly, I could use the distraction. Emily won't be back for at least a week, and I don't want to sit alone in my apartment worrying about her mother." So Ryan came over. We cooked pasta carbonara, Ryan's specialty, something he'd learned from an ex-girlfriend who was Italian. We drank a nice Chianti that Ryan brought, opened a second bottle, and eventually a third. We laughed and told stories and played a board game that Sarah had bought, some complicated strategy thing that Ryan was surprisingly good at. It should have been fun. And it was, for the most part. But there was something in the air that night, some undercurrent I couldn't quite identify. The way Sarah's laugh seemed a little too bright when Ryan told a joke. The way their eyes met a fraction too long when they were passing dishes at dinner. The way Ryan's hand brushed against Sarah's shoulder when he was reaching for the wine bottle, and how she didn't pull away. At the time, I told myself I was imagining things. That I was stressed from work and seeing problems where none existed. That I was being paranoid and insecure. But I wasn't imagining things. I was watching the early stages of an affair unfold in my own dining room, and I was too blind to see it. Looking back, I can trace the timeline with painful precision. The encrypted emails started in April, roughly 6 weeks after that first crack. That first late night when Sarah was working on her client presentation. By June, they were messaging every day, sometimes dozens of times. By July, they'd started meeting in person during lunch breaks at coffee shops across town where they thought they wouldn't run into anyone we knew. By August, they were sleeping together. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because in the moment, in the daily grind of building a company and maintaining a marriage and trying to be a good friend, I didn't see any of this. I saw small changes in behavior that I rationalized away. I saw distance growing between me and Sarah that I attributed to work stress and the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. I saw Ryan being cagey about his personal life and assumed he was having relationship problems. With Emily, that he didn't want to discuss. I saw everything and nothing at the same time. The fourth crack came in September, and it was the first one I couldn't ignore. We had our annual company retreat in Bend, Oregon, a 3-day trip where we'd take the entire team away from the office to do team-building exercises, strategic planning, and mostly just blow off steam. It was something Ryan had insisted on from the beginning, a way to keep the company culture strong as we grew. Sarah came along as my +1, as she had for the previous 2 years. It was always fun, a chance for her to see the company side of my life, to meet all the people I worked with, to understand why I spent so many hours at the office. That year, Ryan had broken up with Emily a month earlier. He'd been vague about the details, just said that they'd grown apart, that they wanted different things. I tried to be supportive, but he'd brushed off my attempts to talk about it. I'm fine.
Jules, he'd said, really, it was mutual. We're still friends. Let's just focus on the retreat, making sure everyone has a good time. The retreat started off fine. We did a ropes course on the first day, some trust-building exercises that were cheesy, but actually kind of fun. That night, we had a barbecue at the rental house we'd booked, and everyone drank and played games and bonded the way teams do when they're away from the office. I noticed Sarah and Ryan talking by the fire pit at one point, their heads close together, their conversation looking intense. When I walked over, they both looked up, and there was a flash of something in both their faces. Surprise? Guilt? I couldn't quite place it. What are you guys talking about? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Just start-up war stories, Ryan said smoothly. I was telling Sarah about that time we almost lost our entire Series A because of that disastrous board meeting. Oh God, don't remind me, I said, sitting down next to Sarah. She shifted slightly, putting a bit more distance between herself and Ryan. I still have nightmares about that presentation. We talked for a while, the three of us, and eventually other people joined us and the moment passed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd interrupted something, that there was a conversation happening beneath the surface that I wasn't part of. The next day, we went hiking. It was a beautiful trail through the Cascade Mountains, and most of the team was in good spirits despite the early morning start and the mild hangovers from the night before. I was near the front of the group with some of our engineers discussing a technical problem we'd been struggling with at work. Sarah was somewhere in the middle of the pack. Ryan was with her. I didn't think much of it at the time. Why would I? They were friends. They got along well. It made sense that they'd walk together and chat. But then I
looked back at one point, and I saw them. Really saw them. The way Ryan's hand rested on her lower back as he helped her over a tricky part of the trail. The way she smiled up at him, her face flushed from exertion and something else. The way they looked at each other just for a second, with an intensity that made my stomach drop. I stopped walking. One of the engineers almost ran into me. "You okay, Jules?" Michael asked, giving me a concerned look. "Yeah," I said, forcing myself to start moving again. "Yeah, just..." Caught my breath. "Altitude. We're only at 4,000 feet. Right, out of shape, I guess." I didn't look back again for the rest of the hike. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I was seeing things that weren't there, that my best friend and my wife were just being friendly, and I was being a paranoid, jealous idiot. I couldn't unsee that look, that moment of connection between them that felt like betrayal, even though nothing had technically happened, or at least nothing I'd witnessed. That night, back at the rental house, I waited until Sarah and I were alone in our room. "You and Ryan seem to be getting along well," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "What? Oh yeah, he's fun to talk to." She was unpacking her bag, not looking at me. "Why?" "Just, I noticed you two were hanging out a lot today." "Jules, are you seriously doing this right now?" "Doing what?" "Being jealous of your best friend." She turned to face me, her expression somewhere between annoyed and hurt. "Ryan and I are friends, that's it. You're the one who's always talking about how great he is, how he's like a brother to you. Now you have a problem with us being friends." "I don't have a problem with you being friends. I just..." "Just what?" I didn't know how to finish that sentence. What was I accusing her of? Talking too much to Ryan? Walking next to him on a hike? Sharing a
moment of eye contact. It all sounded insane when I tried to put it into words. "Nothing," I said finally. "Never mind, I'm being stupid." "Yeah, you are." She came over and wrapped her arms around me. "I love you, Jules. You know that, right? You're the one I married. You're the one I chose." "I know." "Good. Now stop being weird and kiss me." I kissed her, and I chose to believe her because what else could I do? Accuse her of having an affair with Ryan based on a feeling, based on a look? I had no evidence, no proof, just this gnawing anxiety in my gut that I tried desperately to ignore. The rest of September and October passed in a blur of work. Secure Haven was growing faster than we'd anticipated, and we were struggling to keep up with demand. We hired 15 new people in 2 months, sales staff, engineers, customer support specialists, even an HR manager to handle all the new complexity. Ryan and I were barely sleeping, pulled in a dozen.
Different directions, trying to scale up without sacrificing the quality that had made us successful in the first place. It was exciting and terrifying and exhausting all at once. Sarah seemed happier. She'd landed a major contract with a well-known tech company, and her career was taking off in exactly the way she'd always wanted. She was working late less often, seemed more present when we were together, initiated sex more frequently. I told myself that my paranoia from the retreat had been just that, paranoia, that things were getting back to normal, that I'd been stressed and tired and seeing problems where none existed. I was wrong, of course. Things weren't getting back to normal. They were getting better at hiding. November was when I found the first real evidence. It was small, so small I almost missed it. Sarah and I were having dinner at home, Chinese takeout on a Wednesday night, talking about our days. Her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it and her expression changed for just a second. A flicker of something I couldn't quite identify before she schooled her features back to neutral. "Who was that?" I asked. "Just Ryan, asking about that investor dinner next week." "Can I see?" She looked up sharply. "What?" "Oh, the message. Can I see it?" "Why would you want to see my messages with Ryan?" "I don't know. I guess I'm just curious what kind of work stuff you two are messaging about." She picked up her phone and looked at the screen, then held it out to me. "Here, knock yourself out." I looked. It was exactly what she'd said. Ryan asking if we were still on for the investor dinner on Tuesday, confirming the time and location. Nothing suspicious, nothing inappropriate. "Happy?" Sarah asked, her voice tight. "Yeah, sorry, I don't know why I..." "Yes, you do. You think there's something going on between me and Ryan." "No, You've been weird about this since the..."
Retreat. Every time I mention his name, you get this look on your face, like you're waiting for me to confess to something. I'm not. Do you trust me, Jules? The question hung in the air between us. Did I trust her? I wanted to. God, I wanted to so badly. But there was this voice in the back of my head, this nagging doubt that wouldn't go away no matter how hard I tried to silence it. "Yes," I said, "I trust you." "Then act like it, because this jealousy, this paranoia, it's exhausting, and it's unfair to me and to Ryan." She was right. Of course she was right. I was being unfair, seeing shadows where there was only light, letting my own insecurities poison what should have been simple friendships. But here's the thing I didn't know then. That message she showed me wasn't the last message Ryan had sent. It was the second to last. She deleted the actual last message before showing me her phone. I didn't find that out until much later,
when I was deep into Ryan's digital life, reconstructing everything he'd tried to hide. That final message, the one she deleted before showing me her phone, was, "Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again?" December brought the holidays and a temporary reprieve from my suspicions. Sarah and I flew to Boston to spend Christmas with her family, and being away from Portland, away from Ryan, away from all the stress of the company, felt like coming up for air after being underwater too long. We walked through the snow-covered streets of her childhood neighborhood, visited her old high school, drank hot chocolate at the cafe where she'd had her first date. Her mother made elaborate meals every night, and her father told the same stories he'd told at every family gathering for the past decade. It was warm and familiar and comfortable in a way that my own childhood had never been. On Christmas Eve, after everyone else had gone to bed, Sarah and I sat by the fireplace in her parents' living room, drinking wine and watching the flames dance. "I'm sorry," I said. "For what?" "For being suspicious, for being jealous, for not trusting you the way I should." She leaned against my shoulder. "You've been under a lot of stress. I get it. The company is growing so fast and you're carrying so much responsibility. That's not an excuse. No, but it's an explanation." She looked up at me, her green eyes reflecting the firelight. "We're okay, Jules. You and me. We're solid. Promise?" "I promise." I kissed her, and for a moment, everything felt right again. The doubts and suspicions faded into background noise, replaced by the warmth of her body against mine, the taste of wine on her lips, the simple joy of being together. When we got back to Portland after New Year's, I threw myself back into work with renewed energy. I was determined to be better, a better husband, a better business partner, a better person. I started coming home earlier, planning date nights with Sarah, making an effort to be more present in our relationship instead of constantly distracted by work. For a few weeks, it seemed to work. We reconnected, rediscovered the easy intimacy we'd had in the early days of our relationship. I felt like I'd pulled us back from the edge of something dangerous, that I'd saved our marriage through sheer force of will and attention. Looking back, I realized that I was succeeding in exactly one thing, driving their affair further underground, making them more careful, more paranoid, more skilled at hiding what they were doing. January and February were business as usual. Secure Haven was thriving. We just signed our largest contract ever, a $2 million deal with a Fortune 500 company that needed a complete overhaul of their cloud security infrastructure. Ryan was ecstatic, talking about how this would put us on the map, how we'd be competing with the big players in the industry within 2 years. "This is what we've been working toward, Jules," he said one night over drinks. We were celebrating the contract at a bar near the office, just the two of us, like old times. "We're not kids playing startup anymore. We're a real company, a serious player." "Thanks to you," I said. "I could never have landed that deal. And I could never have built the product that made them want to sign with us." He raised his glass. "We're a team, brother. Always have been. Always will be." I believed him. Even now, months after I'd first started suspecting something was wrong, I still believed in our friendship. I still thought we were building something together that mattered. What I didn't know was that Ryan had started planning his exit strategy, that he'd been quietly talking to investors about starting a competing company, that he'd been positioning himself to steal not just my wife, but my business and my future. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. March is when everything started unraveling for real. Sarah got a job offer, a huge one. A major tech company in San Francisco wanted her to lead their entire brand strategy division. It was a dream job, the kind of opportunity that only comes once in a career. 6 figures, equity options, a team of 15 people reporting to her. The only problem, it was in San Francisco, 500 miles south of Portland. "I have to take it," she said when she told me about the offer. We were in the kitchen, and she was pacing back and forth, unable to stand still. "Jules, this is everything I've been working toward. This is the job that changes everything." "I know," I said. My heart was sinking, but I forced myself to smile. "Congratulations, Sarah. You earned this. You'd come with me, right? We could move to San Francisco together. There are tons of tech companies there, tons of opportunities for Secure Haven to
Expand? Sarah, I can't just leave. Ryan and I built the company here. Our whole team is here. Our clients are mostly in the Pacific Northwest. And Ryan's not going to want to relocate. His entire life is in Portland." She stopped pacing. "So what are you saying? That I should turn it down?" "No, I don't know. I need to think about this. Talk to Ryan about what it would mean for the company." "When?" "Soon. This week, I promise." She nodded, but there was something in her eyes. Relief? Hope? I couldn't quite read it. I talked to Ryan the next day. We met for lunch at our usual spot, a taco place around the corner from the office that made incredible fish tacos and had a back patio where we could talk privately. "San Francisco?" Ryan said when I told him about Sarah's offer. Wow, that's huge for her. Yeah. What are you going to do? I don't know. I can't just leave the company, but I can't ask her to turn down her dream job either. Ryan was quiet for a long moment, staring at his taco without eating it. What if, he said slowly, you went with her? What? Hear me out. You go to San Francisco with Sarah. I stay here and run the day-to-day operations in Portland. You can work remotely, fly up for important meetings, and we can open a San Francisco office. It might actually be good for the company. We've been talking about expansion anyway. Ryan, that's insane. I can't run the technical side of the company from another city. Why not? You've built all the systems and protocols. The engineering team knows what they're doing. You've trained them well, and we have video conferencing, Slack, all the tools we need to stay connected. This could work, Jules. I wanted to argue, to explain all the reasons why this was a terrible idea. But looking at Ryan's earnest face, hearing the conviction in his voice, I found myself wavering. You really think this could work? I do. And honestly, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Sarah's career matters too, man. You can't ask her to sacrifice her dreams for the company. That's not fair to her. He was right. Of course he was right. And he was being so supportive, so understanding, so goddamn reasonable about the whole thing. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't find out until months later, was that Ryan had been sleeping with Sarah for 4 months by that point. That they'd been planning for her to take this job all along. That the relief I'd seen in her eyes when I said I needed to talk to Ryan was because this was part of their plan. They wanted me gone, out of Portland, away from the company, living 500 miles south where I couldn't see what was happening right in front of my face. And like an idiot, I was going to give them exactly what they wanted. Sarah and I moved to San Francisco in May. We found an apartment in Soma, a
modern high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the bay. It was beautiful and expensive and felt nothing like home. The transition was harder than I'd anticipated. Working remotely sounded great in theory, but in practice it meant I was always slightly out of sync with the rest of the team. Important conversations happened without me, decisions got made in hallway discussions that I wasn't part of, and I felt myself slowly becoming peripheral to the company I'd co-founded. Sarah, meanwhile, thrived. She loved her new job, came home every night with stories about the projects she was working on, the talented team she was building, the respect she was earning from senior leadership. She was happier than I'd seen her in years. I was happy for her. I really was. But I was also lonely and disconnected and starting to feel like I'd made a terrible mistake. I flew up to Portland every 2 weeks for a few days, staying in a hotel near the office, trying to maintain some semblance of presence in the company. Ryan was always warm and welcoming when I visited, filling me in on everything that had happened while I was gone, making sure I felt included in all the major decisions. But there was something different about him. A new confidence, maybe. Or a subtle shift in our dynamic, where he was now clearly the one running the show and I was the one visiting to check in. It wasn't dramatic, just 1,000 small changes in body language and tone that added up to a fundamental reordering of our relationship. "How's San Francisco treating you?" he asked during one of my visits in June. We were having drinks at that same bar where we'd celebrated the Fortune 500 contract, but now it felt different. Less like two partners celebrating success, more like an old friend catching up with someone whose life had moved on. "It's fine," I said, adjusting. "Sarah loves it." "That's great. I'm glad she's happy. How are things here?"
Really? Honestly? Fantastic. We just closed 2 more major deals. The team is firing on all cylinders. The culture is strong. He paused. I think this arrangement is working better than either of us expected. Yeah? Something in my chest tightened. Don't get me wrong, I miss having you around every day. But the team has really stepped up. Michael has been incredible handling the sales pipeline. The engineers you hired are solving problems I never thought they'd be able to handle. And I've been able to focus on strategic growth without getting pulled into day-to-day firefighting. He meant it as a compliment, I think. But what I heard was, "We don't need you anymore." The cracks in my marriage, which I'd thought I'd repaired, started showing again in July. Sarah was working late more often again. Different excuse this time. Big product launch coming up, all hands on deck. Temporary craziness that would calm down soon. I believed her because I wanted
to believe her because the alternative was too horrible to contemplate. But then she started traveling for work, quick trips back up to Portland to meet with vendors, overnight stays to attend conferences, weekend team-building retreats that I wasn't invited to. Each time, I felt a little more of the foundation of our marriage erode. "I miss you," I told her one night when she got back from yet another Portland trip. We were lying in bed, and she was scrolling through her phone, only half paying attention to me. "I'm right here. You know what I mean." She put down her phone and looked at me. Jules, what do you want from me? I'm building something important. My career is finally where I always dreamed it would be. You said you supported that. I do support it. I feel like we never see each other anymore, like we're roommates who occasionally have sex, not a married couple. That's not fair. I'm doing my best to balance everything.
I know, I'm sorry. I don't mean to make you feel guilty. Then what do you mean to do? I didn't have an answer to that. What did I want? For time to go backward, for us to never have moved to San Francisco, for everything to go back to the way it was before. That wasn't realistic. That wasn't fair to Sarah's career or her dreams. So I said nothing. And she picked her phone back up and went back to scrolling. And I lay there next to her, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. August is when I started digging. Not because I'd seen any smoking gun evidence, not because anyone had told me anything, just because I couldn't shake this feeling anymore, this certainty that something was very wrong and I was the only person who couldn't see it. I started small. Looking at Sarah's phone when she left it unattended, checking her text message threads. But she was careful. Her conversation with Ryan was perfectly innocent. All work-related discussions.
And friendly banter could have been between any two friends. I felt guilty doing it, like I was violating her privacy and our trust, but I couldn't stop. Then I remembered something Ryan had told me years ago, back when we were first building Secure Haven security protocols. He'd said that people always underestimate metadata, that it's not what you say that reveals your secrets, but when you say it, how often, from where. So I stopped looking at the content of Sarah's messages and started looking at the patterns, the timestamps, the frequency, the locations, and that's when I saw it. Sarah had told me she was travelling to Portland for work every few weeks. Her company's travel records backed that up. She expensed flights and hotels, submitted receipts for client dinners and vendor meetings, but her phone's location data told a different story. Yes, she was in Portland during those trips, but she wasn't at vendor meetings or client dinners. Her phone was pinging off cell towers near Ryan's apartment. For hours at a time, late into the evening, sometimes until morning. I sat in my home office, staring at the location logs I'd pulled from our shared iCloud account, feeling my entire world tilt on its axis. It wasn't proof of an affair, not technically. She could have been at Ryan's apartment for legitimate work reasons. Maybe he was helping her with something. Maybe they were collaborating on a project. But I knew. Deep in my bones, I knew. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because I'd learned something from my career in cybersecurity. When you think you've found a vulnerability, you don't immediately alert the attacker. You quietly gather evidence, map out the full extent of the breach, figure out exactly what you're dealing with before you make your move. So I started gathering evidence. I went deeper into Sarah's digital life than I'd ever gone before. It felt wrong, like I was violating something sacred. Crossing a line I couldn't uncross, but I couldn't stop. I needed to know. Her primary email account was too obvious. She'd be careful there. But she'd connected several accounts to our home network over the years. An old Gmail account from college that she rarely used. A work email that synced to her personal laptop. I started with the work email. There was a security vulnerability in her company's email system that I'd noticed months ago. Not malicious, just sloppy configuration that left a backdoor open. I'd meant to tell her about it so she could report it to their IT department, but I'd forgotten. Now I was glad I had. It took me 3 hours to write a script that would exploit the vulnerability and give me access to her work email without triggering any security alerts. Another 2 hours to set up a system that would automatically mirror her emails to a private server I'd set up specifically for this purpose. I told myself I was only going to look for
evidence of the affair, that I wasn't going to invade her privacy beyond what was necessary to confirm my suspicions. But once I was in, once I could see her emails flowing into my private server in real time, I couldn't look away. The first thing I found was a message from Ryan dated 3 days ago. Missing you. Can't wait for next week when you're back in Portland. I've been thinking about what you said about telling Jules. I think you're right. We can't keep doing this forever. But let's wait until after the investor meeting. We need to make sure everything is in place first. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I kept reading. Sarah's response. I know, but I feel terrible about this, Ryan. He doesn't deserve what we're doing to him. He's a good man. Ryan. He is. But you and I both know you haven't been happy for a long time. And neither has he, really. Maybe this is better for everyone in the long run. Sarah. Maybe. I
just wish it didn't have to hurt so much. Ryan. It'll be worth it. We'll be worth it. I promise. I read the exchange 5 times, then 10 times, then stopped counting. The words were burned into my brain, impossible to forget or unsee. I went back further in the email archive, June, May, April, March, February, January. The affair had been going on for 10 months. 10 months of lies, 10 months of betrayal, 10 months of them planning a future together while I lived in blissful ignorance 500 miles away. I found messages about finding excuses for Sarah's trips to Portland, discussions about being more careful after I'd gotten suspicious during the company retreat, plans for Ryan to break up with Emily to make himself available, Sarah's agonizing about whether to take the San Francisco job, and Ryan's insistence that it was the perfect solution. It would get me out of the way while giving them a legitimate reason to see each other more often. It was all there. Every detail, every lie, every moment of betrayal meticulously documented in their emails, preserved forever in the digital record they'd thought was secure. But it wasn't just the affair. As I kept reading, I found something else, something worse. Ryan was planning to force me out of secure haven. He'd been talking to investors behind my back, positioning himself as the sole visionary behind the company's success. He'd been preparing to call a board meeting where he'd argue that my inability to be present due to the move to San Francisco made me a liability to the company's growth. He'd lined up support from 3 of our 5 board members to vote me out and dilute my equity stake. And Sarah had known about it. She'd helped him plan it. They'd discussed how to handle my reaction, how to minimize the potential for conflict, how to structure the separation to keep me from fighting back. They weren't just having an affair, they were systematically dismantling my entire life. I spent 3 days not sleeping, not eating, just reading through email after email, reconstructing the full scope of their betrayal. By the time I'd finished, I had documentation of every lie, every secret meeting, every discussion about how to manipulate me. Part of me wanted to confront them immediately, to forward every email to both of them and watch their worlds burn, to scream and rage and let them know exactly what they'd done and how much it hurt. But I didn't, because I remembered something my father had told me when I was a kid, the only piece of advice he'd given me that was actually worth remembering. When someone shows you who they really are, don't get mad, get smart. Ryan and Sarah had shown me exactly who they were. They were people who would betray their closest relationships for their own benefit. People who would lie and manipulate and scheme. People who saw me not as a partner or a husband, but as an obstacle to be removed. So I would get smart, I would let them think their plan was working, I would play the part of the oblivious husband and the absentee business partner. I would give them enough rope to hang themselves with. And then, when the time was right, when I had every piece of evidence I needed and every angle covered, I would destroy them both so completely that they'd spend the rest of their lives regretting the day they decided to betray me. The first step was understanding the full scope of what I was dealing with. Ryan's plan to force me out of secure haven was sophisticated. He'd been working on it for months, carefully positioning himself as the indispensable leader while subtly undermining my contributions. He'd cultivated relationships with our investors, had private conversations with board members, and built a narrative about how my distance from the company was hurting our growth potential. The board meeting was scheduled for October 15th, 6 weeks away. Ryan was planning to use that meeting to make his move, to call for a vote on my continued role in the company. And based on the email exchanges I'd found between him and various board members, he had the votes he needed. If he succeeded, I'd be forced out of the company I'd co-founded. My equity stake would be diluted to near worthlessness through a carefully structured financing round that Ryan had already arranged with a new investor. I'd lose everything I'd built, and Ryan would take full control of Secure Haven. But Ryan had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated me. He'd spent so much time thinking of me as the technical guy, the one who built systems but didn't understand strategy or politics, that he'd forgotten I was the one who designed all of Secure Haven's security infrastructure. Every system, every protocol, every access control, I'd built them, which meant I knew every vulnerability, every backdoor, every way into the digital fortress that protected our company's most valuable assets. If Ryan wanted to wage war using corporate politics and investor relationships, I could fight that battle on his terms and probably lose. I wasn't a natural politician. I wasn't charismatic or manipulative or skilled at managing board dynamics. But if I changed the battlefield, if I made this about information and control and technical expertise, that was a war I could win. I spent the next 2 weeks conducting the most thorough digital forensics investigation of my career, not just on Sarah and Ryan's personal communications, but on every aspect of Secure Haven's business operations. I found more damning evidence almost immediately. Ryan had been violating our client agreements, Secure. Haven's contracts included strict clauses about not sharing proprietary security information with third parties. But Ryan had been doing exactly that, leaking details about our security protocols to potential investors to make the company seem more attractive, showing confidential client information to board members to justify his arguments about growth potential. Each violation was a potential lawsuit. Each breach of contract could result in millions in damages if our clients found out. I documented everything. Every email where Ryan had attached client information that shouldn't have been shared. Every meeting where he'd discussed proprietary protocols with unauthorized individuals. Every instance where he'd put our client's security at risk for his own benefit. Then I went deeper. I discovered that Ryan had been stealing. Not in an obvious way, no direct embezzlement or fraudulent transactions, but he'd been systematically diverting company resources for his own benefit, expensing personal purchases as business expenses, using company time and employee labor to develop side projects that were technically his own intellectual property, setting up consulting agreements with shell companies that he controlled, funneling money out of secure haven and into his own pockets. It was clever. Each individual transaction was small enough to avoid raising red flags. But over the course of 2 years, he'd siphoned off nearly $200,000 from the company. I documented all of that too. Then I started looking at the investors and board members he'd cultivated relationships with, the ones who were supporting his plan to force me out. What I found was interesting. 2 of the 3 board members who'd committed to voting with Ryan had been offered very favorable terms on a separate investment opportunity, a new startup that Ryan was quietly planning to found once he'd taken full control of Secure Haven. It wasn't quite bribery, but it was close enough that it would make them extremely uncomfortable if it became public knowledge. The 3rd board member, a venture capitalist named Thomas Greenberg, who'd been part of our Series A funding, had a more complicated situation. I found emails between Ryan and Thomas discussing some problematic investments that Thomas needed to distance himself from, failed startups that reflected poorly on his judgment. Ryan was offering to help Thomas rehabilitate his reputation in exchange for support in forcing me out. All of this was leverage. All of it was ammunition I could use when the time came. But I still wasn't ready to make my move, because there was one more piece I needed. Control. Secure. Haven systems were built on infrastructure I'd designed. Every server, every database, every access control, I'd architected it all with multiple layers of redundancy and security. And buried deep in those layers were administrative backdoors that only I knew about. I'd created them years ago as a failsafe, a way to access critical systems if something went catastrophically wrong. Ryan knew they existed in theory. We'd discussed the need for emergency access protocols when we first set up the company's infrastructure. But he didn't know where they were or how to access them. Now I spent a week quietly strengthening my control over those systems. I changed passwords and access keys in ways that would be invisible to anyone who wasn't specifically looking for them. I created new administrative accounts with the highest level of privileges, hidden behind layers of obscurity that even our own IT staff wouldn't be able to detect. By the time I was done, I had complete control over Secure Haven's entire technical infrastructure, every server, every backup, every piece of code, every client database. It was all under my command, and nobody knew it. If Ryan wanted to fight me for control of the company, he was going to discover that the ground he was standing on wasn't nearly as solid as he thought. October 1st, 2 weeks before the board meeting where Ryan planned to make his move, I flew up to Portland telling Sarah and Ryan that I needed to be at the office for a few days to work on a critical security issue. Ryan seemed pleased, probably thinking it would give him a chance to have Sarah to himself for a few days. What neither of them knew was that I was finally ready to start my counterattack. I started by having a private conversation with Michael, our head of sales. Michael was a good guy, honest, hard-working, loyal to the company, and more importantly, he was one of the few people at Secure Haven who had no idea about the affair between Ryan and Sarah. "Michael, I need to ask you something," I said. "We were having coffee at a place across town from our office, somewhere we wouldn't be overheard, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you think Ryan is doing a good job leading the company?" Michael looked uncomfortable. "Jules, why are you asking me this?" "Because I'm trying to understand something. I've been working remotely for 5 months now, and I feel like I'm losing touch with what's really happening at the company. You're here every day. You see how Ryan operates. I need your honest assessment." He was quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with his loyalty to Ryan versus his honesty with me. "Ryan is good at what he does," Michael finally said. "He's charismatic. He's great with investors. He knows how to close deals. But what? But he's been making decisions lately that don't feel right. Cutting corners on client implementations to hit revenue targets, promising features we can't deliver to close sales. And there's been some weirdness with expenses and consulting fees that I don't fully understand." "Weirdness how?" Michael pulled out his phone and showed me a spreadsheet. "I started tracking this a few months ago because something felt off. Look at these consulting payments to Strategic Advisory Partners, LLC. They're significant, tens of thousands of dollars every quarter. But I can't figure out what services
they're providing. I've asked Ryan about it, and he says it's confidential business development stuff that he can't discuss. I looked at the numbers. They matched perfectly with the shell company transactions I'd found in my investigation. Michael, if I told you that I was concerned about Ryan's management of the company, would you support me in asking the board to look into some of these issues? Jules, what's going on? I can't tell you everything yet, but I need to know if you'd be willing to back me up if I raise questions with the board. He met my eyes. If you have evidence of something wrong, yeah, I would. This company means too much to me to let it get destroyed by someone's ego or greed. Good. I'm going to need you to testify to the board about what you've observed. The expense irregularities, the client promises we can't keep, all of it. Are you willing to do that? When? Soon. Very soon. My next
conversation was with Claire, one of our original engineers. She was brilliant, one of those rare developers who could see patterns that nobody else could see, who could solve problems that seemed impossible. She was also intensely loyal to the company and to the vision we'd started with. Claire, I need your help with something, I said. We were in a conference room at the office, late in the evening after most people had gone home. What's up? I need you to conduct an audit of our codebase. Specifically, I need you to document any instances where client-specific security code or proprietary algorithms have been committed to repositories that aren't properly access controlled. Why would there be client code in open repositories? I hope there isn't, but I need to verify. Can you do it discreetly? She looked at me suspiciously. Jules, what's this about? I'm conducting a security audit. I think we may have some vulnerabilities in our code, management practices that could expose us to liability. Does Ryan know about this? Not yet. I want to have a complete picture before I bring it to him. Okay, she said slowly. I can do that. It'll take a few days. That's fine. Just keep it quiet until I tell you otherwise. What I was really looking for, of course, was evidence of Ryan's plan to start a competing company. If he'd been preparing to leave Secure Haven and take our technology with him, there would be traces in our code repositories, files that had been copied, algorithms that had been duplicated, documentation that had been extracted. And if Claire found that evidence, it would be another nail in Ryan's coffin. October 7th, 8 days before the board meeting. I had lunch with Thomas Greenberg, the VC, who was planning to vote with Ryan to force me out. I'd reached out to him directly, saying I wanted to discuss some strategic questions about the company's future. He'd agreed readily, probably thinking it would give him a chance to prepare me for what was coming. We met at an upscale restaurant downtown. Thomas was in his early 50s, with grey hair and expensive suits and the kind of effortless confidence that came from making hundreds of successful investments over a long career. Julian, he said warmly, shaking my hand. Good to see you. How's San Francisco treating you? It's fine. Different from Portland, but Sarah loves it. And the remote work situation is working out. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. I know there's been some concern about my ability to stay engaged with the company while living in San Francisco. Thomas's expression became more guarded. Well, it's natural for the board to have questions when a co-founder relocates, but I'm sure we can address any concerns. I'm sure we can too. In fact, I wanted to share some information with you that I think will help contextualize those concerns. I pulled out my tablet and opened a document. This is a summary of some irregularities I've discovered in how the company has been managed over the past year. Expense improprieties, questionable consulting agreements, violations of client confidentiality agreements. I watched Thomas's face carefully as he read. I saw confusion, then surprise, then growing concern. These are serious allegations, Julian. They're not allegations, they're documented facts. I have evidence for every single item on that list. Does Ryan know you have this? Not yet. I wanted to bring it to the board first, get guidance on how to handle it. But Thomas, I need to be direct with you. I know that Ryan has been working to build support for forcing me out of the company, and I know that you've been planning to support him in that effort. Thomas sat back in his chair, his expression carefully neutral. Who told you that? It doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm giving you a chance to reconsider your position before this gets ugly, because if this goes to a board vote, I'm going to present all of this evidence to the full board, and I'm going to make sure our clients and our investors know exactly what's been happening behind closed doors. That sounds like a threat. It's not a threat, it's a statement of fact. I built this company, Thomas. I'm not going to let it be stolen from me by someone who's been systematically violating our values and our contracts. Thomas was quiet for a long time, clearly calculating his options. What do you want? he finally asked. "I want the board to conduct a proper investigation into these allegations before making any decisions about leadership changes. And I want you to vote to table any discussions of my role in the company until that investigation is complete. And if I don't, then I present this evidence at the board meeting and I make it very clear to everyone involved that there are people on the board who are willing to overlook serious misconduct in exchange for favourable treatment on other investments. Your reputation in this industry is built on integrity, Thomas. Do you really want to risk it to help Ryan Caldwell force out the technical co-founder of a company he's been systematically defrauding?" I could see him doing the math in his head, weighing the value of his relationship with Ryan against the potential damage to his reputation if this became public. "I'll need to verify this information independently," he said. "Of course, I'll provide you with access to all the evidence. Take whatever time you need." "And you're certain about all of this?" "I'm certain." He nodded slowly. "All right, I'll look into it. But Julian, if you're wrong about this, if this is some kind of political maneuvering—" "I'm not wrong, and this isn't politics. This is about protecting a company that we've all invested in from someone who's been putting it at risk for his own benefit." October 10th, 5 days before the board meeting. Claire finished her code audit and requested a meeting with me. We met at a coffee shop far from the office. "You were right," she said without preamble. "There are problems, big ones." "Show me." She pulled out her laptop and walked me through what she'd found. Over the past 6 months, someone with administrative access to our code repositories had been systematically copying proprietary code and documentation to a private repository. Not all of it, just enough to build a competing product. All the core algorithms, all the security protocols, all the hard-won innovations that made Secure Haven's product better than our competitors. "Can you tell who did it?" I asked, even though I already knew. "The commits are attributed to a test account that was supposedly for QA purposes, but based on the timing and the access patterns, it had to be someone with full administrative privileges. The only people who have that level of access are you, Ryan, and Mark from IT." "Mark wouldn't do this." "I know, which means it was Ryan." Claire looked sick. "Jules, if this gets out, if our clients find out that our proprietary code has been compromised—" "I know, that's why we need to handle this very carefully. I need you to document everything you found, every commit, every file that was copied, every piece of evidence that shows this was systematic intellectual property theft. Can you do that?" "Yeah, it'll take me another day or two." "That's fine. Once you have it documented, I want you to send it directly to me. Don't discuss it with anyone else, especially not Ryan." "Jules, what's going on? Why is Ryan stealing from his own company?" I considered how much to tell her. "He's planning to leave and start a competing company. He's been systematically positioning himself to take over Secure Haven, force me out, and then use our technology to build a competitor." That's insane. That's illegal." "Yes, it is, and we're going to stop him. But I need you to trust me and stay quiet about this until the right moment." She nodded, but I could see the anger in her eyes. Claire had worked ridiculous hours building our product, had poured her creativity and passion into every line of code. The idea that Ryan was planning to steal all of that and use it for his own benefit was a personal betrayal for her too. "I'll get you everything you need," she said. "And Jules, make him pay for this." October 13th, 2 days before the board meeting. I had one final conversation before my plan could move forward. This one was with Sarah. I flew back to San Francisco for the weekend. Sarah thought it was because I missed her, because I wanted to spend time together before the busy week ahead. She had no idea that I'd been systematically dismantling her affair partner's life over the past 2 weeks. We had dinner together at our apartment. I cooked pasta carbonara, Ryan's specialty, though Sarah didn't comment on the irony. We drank wine and talked about her work and my work and made plans for a vacation we both knew we'd never take. After dinner, we sat on the couch together. Sarah curled up against me and I wrapped my arm around her, feeling the warmth of her body against mine, and remembering all the reasons I'd fallen in love with her. "I need to tell you something," I said. She tensed slightly. "What?" "I know about Ryan." The words hung in the air between us. I felt her whole body go rigid, felt her breathing change. "Jules, I know about the affair. I know how long it's been going on. I know about your plans to tell me after his board meeting. I know everything." She pulled away from me, her face pale.
"How long have you known? Does it matter? Jules, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain why you betrayed me with my best friend? Can you explain why you helped him plan to steal my company? Can you explain why you've been lying to my face for almost a year?" Tears were streaming down her face now. I'm sorry. God, Jules, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. You just what? Accidentally started sleeping together? Accidentally fell in love? Accidentally conspired to destroy my life? It wasn't like that. Ryan and I, we just connected. We understood each other. And you were so distant, so absorbed in your work all the time. You weren't there, Jules. You were never there. So you decided to fuck my best friend and help him steal my company. That's a hell of a way to handle feeling lonely, Sarah. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? I stood up, unable to sit still anymore. I moved
To San Francisco for you. I left the company I built, left my entire life in Portland because you wanted this job, and the whole time you were using that distance to have an affair with Ryan and help him force me out. Jules, please. I'm filing for divorce. I've already contacted a lawyer. You'll be served with papers on Monday. Jules, wait. Can't we talk about this? Can't we try to work through this? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. This wasn't the woman I'd married. This was someone who'd chosen comfort and excitement over commitment, who'd chosen betrayal over communication, who'd chosen to destroy our life together rather than fight to save it. There's nothing to work through. You made your choice. You chose Ryan, so you can have him. I hope it was worth it. What are you going to do? I'm going to the board meeting on Monday. I'm going to present evidence of everything Ryan has been doing.
and then I'm going to watch his world burn. Jules, don't do this, please. Whatever he's done, it's not worth destroying the company over it. The company will be fine. Ryan won't. And honestly, Sarah, I don't give a fuck what that means for you. I grabbed my keys and walked out, leaving her crying on the couch in our apartment. I drove to a hotel near the airport and checked in, not trusting myself to stay in the same space as her without saying things I couldn't take back. That night I didn't sleep. I went over my plan one more time, checking every detail, making sure I hadn't missed anything. By dawn, I was ready. October 15th, the board meeting. I'd flown up to Portland the night before, but I hadn't told Ryan I was coming. As far as he knew, I was going to dial into the meeting remotely from San Francisco, which would make it easier for him to control the narrative and push through his vote to force me out. Instead, I walked into the
conference room at Secure Haven's office at 8:55 a.m., 5 minutes before the meeting was scheduled to start. Ryan was already there, talking with two of the board members who'd been supporting him. The expression on his face when he saw me was priceless. Shock, confusion, and just a hint of fear. "Jules," he said, recovering his composure quickly. "I didn't know you were coming in person." "Surprise. I thought this meeting was important enough to warrant being here physically." Thomas Greenberg was already seated at the head of the conference table, looking grim. The other board members filtered in over the next few minutes. Ryan kept glancing at me nervously, clearly trying to figure out what I was doing there and whether it was going to interfere with his plans. Thomas called the meeting to order at 9 a.m. sharp. "Thank you all for being here," he said. "I know we have a full agenda, but before we get to the items that Ryan sent around, I need to address something that came to my attention last week. Julian has raised some concerns about company management that the board needs to discuss." Ryan's face went pale. "What concerns?" "Julian, would you like to present?" I stood up and connected my laptop to the conference room display. "Thank you, Thomas. What I'm about to share with you is uncomfortable, but it's necessary for the board to understand the full context of Secure Haven's current situation." I clicked to my first slide, which showed a timeline of the expense irregularities I'd discovered. Over the past 2 years, Ryan has been systematically diverting company funds for personal use. This includes fraudulent expense reports, payments to shell companies he controls, and unauthorized consulting fees. The total amount diverted is approximately $197,000. Ryan shot to his feet. "That's a lie. Jules, what the hell are you doing?" "I'm presenting documented evidence to the board. If you'll let me continue, you'll see that I have receipts, bank records, and email trails supporting every allegation." "This is insane. You're making up accusations because you're upset about the leadership discussion we were supposed to have today." Thomas held up a hand. "Ryan, sit down. Let him present his evidence. You'll have a chance to respond." Ryan sat down, but I could see his mind racing, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much damage it would do. I spent the next 30 minutes walking through everything I'd found: the expense fraud, the violations of client confidentiality agreements, the code theft and intellectual property violations, the conflicts of interest with board members. Every slide was backed up by documentation, emails, transaction records, code repository logs, everything. By the time I was done, 2 of the board members who'd been supporting Ryan had shifted their body language completely. They weren't looking at him like an ally. anymore. They were looking at him like a liability. "These are serious allegations," said Margaret Chen, one of our Series B investors. "Ryan, what's your response?" Ryan looked like he was struggling to breathe. "This is, Julian is taking things out of context. Yes, there may have been some accounting irregularities, but nothing criminal. And the rest of this, the client information sharing, the code management issues, these are all normal business practices that Julian is trying to paint as malicious because he's threatened by my success in running the company." "Normal business practices," I said. "Ryan, you stole proprietary code to start a competing company. You've been planning to force me out so you could take full control of Secure Haven and then gut it for your own benefit. That's not normal business practice. That's fraud." "I haven't started any competing company. That's paranoid fantasy." "Really?" I clicked to another slide, showing the private code repository Claire had found. "Then explain this. Explain why you've been systematically copying our proprietary code to a private repository. Explain why you've been extracting documentation and algorithms that have nothing to do with any legitimate business purpose." "I was doing security backups." "Bullshit. Security backups don't involve changing attribution to fake accounts. They don't involve selective extraction of only the most valuable intellectual property. You were preparing to leave and take our technology with you." The room was silent, except for the sound of Ryan's heavy breathing. Thomas looked at Ryan with an expression of deep disappointment. "Ryan, I think you need to retain legal counsel before this conversation continues. As of this moment, you're suspended from all management responsibilities, pending a full investigation by the board and potentially by law enforcement." "You can't do this," Ryan said, but his voice was weak. "We can, and we are. The evidence Julian has presented is serious enough to warrant immediate action. You're to have no contact with employees, no access to company systems, and no involvement in any business decisions until this investigation is complete." Ryan looked at me with pure hatred. "You did this, you self-righteous prick. You think you're so perfect, so morally superior, but you're just scared that I was better at running this company than you ever were." "I'm not scared of you, Ryan. I'm disgusted by you. You were my best friend, my brother, and you betrayed me in every way possible. So yeah, I made sure you'd pay for it." "Sarah told me you knew about us," he said, and I saw him realize his mistake immediately, confirming the affair in front of the entire board. "Yes, I know about the affair. I know you've been sleeping with my wife for almost a year. I know you convinced her to take the San Francisco job so you could get me out of the way. I know everything, Ryan. Every email, every message, every plan you made to destroy my life. And now everyone else knows too." Margaret Chen cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should take a short break. This has become rather personal." "It was always personal," I said. "Ryan made it personal when he decided that stealing my company and my wife was a legitimate business strategy. The board meeting lasted another 3 hours. By the end, Ryan had been formally suspended, a forensic accounting firm had been hired to investigate the financial irregularities, and the board had agreed to table any discussion of my role in the company until the investigation was complete. Ryan left the office escorted by building security. His access to all company systems had been revoked. His email was being monitored. His physical office was being packed up and inventoried to preserve evidence. I watched him walk out and felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just a hollow emptiness where my friendship with him used to be. But I wasn't done yet. The next phase of my revenge was more subtle. Over the following weeks, I quietly reached out to every major client we had. I explained to them personally what had happened, how Ryan had violated confidentiality agreements, how their proprietary information had been at risk, how I discovered the breaches and stopped them before any real damage was done. I positioned myself as the hero of the story, the technical founder who'd saved them from a rogue executive who'd put their security at risk. And I offered them my personal guarantee that under my leadership, Secure Haven would never compromise their trust again. Every single client stayed with us, not just stayed, renewed their contracts and expanded their relationships with us, because they trusted me. They'd always trusted me. Ryan had been the smooth talker, but I was the one who actually built the systems that protected them. Then I systematically dismantled Ryan's professional reputation. I didn't have to do much, honestly. Once word got out about what had happened, and in the tight-knit world of Portland tech startups, word got out fast. Ryan became toxic. Investors who'd been interested in funding his new venture disappeared. Job opportunities evaporated. People who'd been his friends and allies suddenly didn't return his calls. I helped the process along by making sure that everyone who needed to know the full story got access to the documented evidence, not in a vindictive way. I never sent anything directly. But when journalists started asking questions, I made sure they had access to court documents and board meeting minutes. When potential investors did due diligence, I made sure they found the right information. Ryan tried to fight back. He hired lawyers, threatened lawsuits, tried to argue that I'd orchestrated a smear campaign against him, but he couldn't fight the truth. He'd done everything I'd accused him of, and the evidence was overwhelming. Within 3 months, he was finished in the Portland tech scene. Nobody would work with him. Nobody would fund him. Nobody trusted him. He'd built his career on charisma and relationships, and I'd destroyed both. The divorce from Sarah was messier. She hired a good lawyer, argued that she deserved half of my equity stake in Secure Haven because it had been built during our marriage. My lawyers argued that she'd actively worked to destroy my role in the company, which negated any claim she had to marital property derived from it. We settled out of court, eventually. She got the San Francisco apartment, half our savings, and a one-time payment of $200,000. I kept my equity stake in the company and everything else. It wasn't about the money, though. It was about making sure she understood that actions have consequences, that you don't get to betray someone and then profit from that betrayal. The last time I saw Sarah was at the final mediation session where we signed the divorce papers. She looked tired, older somehow. The affair with Ryan had ended badly. Apparently, once I'd destroyed his career and his reputation, she'd realized that she'd been in love with his confidence and success more than with him as a person. "I'm sorry," she said as we were leaving the mediator's office. "For all of it. I know that doesn't change anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry." I looked at her and felt that same hollow emptiness I'd felt watching Ryan leave the office. "I know you are," I said, "but sorry doesn't give me back the 3 years you stole. It doesn't give me back my best friend or my marriage or my trust in people. So your apology is worth exactly nothing to me." I loved you, Jules. I did. You just loved the idea of something exciting, more than you loved the reality of being married to me. I get it. And honestly, Sarah, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, but you're not going to find it by destroying other people's lives. That was the last conversation we ever had. A year has passed since the board meeting, a year since I burned down my former life and built something new from the ashes. Secure Haven is thriving. Without Ryan's reckless management and ethical violations, we've actually grown faster and more sustainably. I promoted Michael to COO, brought Claire into a VP of engineering role, and hired a CEO from outside the company who could handle the business side while I focused on technology and product development. We closed a $25 million Series C funding around 6 months ago. We're on track to hit $50 million in revenue this year. We're being mentioned in the same conversations as the major players in enterprise cybersecurity. Everything I'd built with Ryan is succeeding beyond what we'd ever dreamed possible. Except now, I'm building it without him. Ryan is far, as I know, left Portland. Last I heard, he'd moved to Austin and was working as a consultant for a small IT firm. His grand plans for a competing startup died with his reputation. He'll spend the rest of his career rebuilding what he destroyed when he decided to betray me. Sarah is still in San Francisco, still working for that tech company. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she's dating someone new, another executive at her company. I hope it works out better for her than our marriage did. I hope she's learned something from the experience. As for me, I moved back to Portland. I bought a house in the West Hills with a view of the city, adopted a rescue dog named Ada after Ada Lovelace, and started rebuilding my life piece by piece. I don't date. I don't trust people enough for that yet. Maybe someday, maybe after enough time has passed and enough therapy has been completed. But for now, I pour my energy into the company, into building something that matters, into creating security systems that actually protect people. Sometimes late at night when I'm working alone in my home office, I think about Ryan. I think about those early days in Seattle when we first met, when everything was possible and the future stretched out ahead of us bright and unlimited. I think about the friendship we had, the brotherhood we built, all the moments of laughter and struggle and triumph that we shared. And then I think about how he destroyed all of that for an affair and a power play, how he looked at everything we'd built together and decided it was worth less than his own ambition, how he betrayed me in every possible way and never once considered what it would cost. People ask me sometimes if I regret what I did, if I think I went too far in destroying Ryan's career and reputation, if revenge was really worth the cost. I tell them the truth. I don't know. Revenge didn't make me feel better. It didn't heal the wounds or restore what was lost. It didn't give me back my best friend or my marriage or my innocence. All it did was ensure that the people who betrayed me paid a price for their actions. Was it worth it? Ask me in another year. Ask me when enough time has passed that I can look back on this objectively instead of through the lens of anger and hurt and betrayal. But if I'm being completely honest, there's a part of me, a dark, petty, vindictive part that I'm not proud of, that takes satisfaction in knowing that Ryan lost everything. that his carefully constructed life collapsed around him, that he learned in the hardest way possible that betrayal has consequences. He chose to wage war on me using lies and manipulation and corporate politics. He thought I was weak, that I was too kind or too trusting or too focused on technology to fight back effectively. He was wrong. I fought back with the only weapons that mattered: truth, evidence, and the cold precision of someone who'd spent their entire career understanding systems and how to break them. And I won. But winning feels an awful lot like losing when you've had to destroy half your life to achieve it. 6 months ago, I received an email from Ryan. He'd somehow gotten my personal email address, probably from an old shared contact who didn't know better. The email was short. "Jules, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I don't blame you. What I did was unforgivable. I betrayed you in ways that can't be excused or explained away. I was selfish and stupid and cruel, and I destroyed something beautiful because I thought I deserved more than what I had. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking that, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the affair. I'm sorry for trying to steal the company. I'm sorry for every lie and every manipulation. I'm sorry for destroying our friendship. You were the best friend I ever had, and I threw it away for nothing. I hope you're well.
I hope Secure Haven is thriving. I hope you found some kind of peace." Ryan, I stared at that email for a long time. Part of me wanted to reply, to tell him how much he'd hurt me, how much damage he'd done, how many nights I'd lain awake replaying every moment of our friendship and wondering how I'd missed the signs that he was capable of such betrayal. But in the end, I just deleted it. Because what was there to say? That I forgave him? I didn't. That I missed him? Maybe, but I missed the person I thought he was, not the person he actually turned out to be. That I hoped he'd found peace? I didn't care. His apology was too little, too late. It was a selfish attempt to ease his own guilt, not a genuine expression of remorse. And even if it was genuine, even if he truly understood what he'd done and truly felt bad about it, it didn't change anything. The friendship was dead. The trust was destroyed. The life we'd built together was ashes. No amount of apology could change that. Last week, I was at a conference in San Francisco. Secure Haven was presenting our latest security innovations to a room full of potential clients and industry leaders. I was backstage preparing for my presentation when I saw her, Sarah. She was in the audience, probably there for work, not realizing that I was one of the keynote speakers. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw recognition, then surprise, then something that might have been regret. I looked away and focused on my presentation notes. When I walked on stage 20 minutes later, she was gone. I gave my presentation to a standing ovation. We signed 3 new major contracts that day. Secure Haven's stock price, we'd gone public 6 months earlier in a successful IPO, jumped 8% on the strength of the announcements. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built, was succeeding beyond my wildest dreams. But I still felt empty. There's a concept in architecture called structural integrity. The idea that a building's strength comes from how all its components work together to support the whole. Remove or weaken too many of those components, and the entire structure collapses. I spent my career building digital architectures with perfect structural integrity, systems that could withstand attacks, survive failures, maintain security, even when individual components were compromised. But I failed to build that same integrity into my personal life. I trusted too much. I missed too many warning signs. I let small cracks grow into catastrophic failures because I wanted to believe that the people I loved were incapable of betraying me. And when I finally saw the truth, when I finally understood the full scope of what Ryan and Sarah had done, I responded with the same methodical precision I'd used to build systems. I identified vulnerabilities, I exploited weaknesses, I dismantled the threat with cold efficiency. It worked. I won, I saved my company, and destroyed my enemies. But in the process, I discovered something terrible about myself. I'm very good at destruction, maybe better than I ever was at creation. And that knowledge, more than anything Ryan or Sarah did to me, is what keeps me up at night. 2 weeks ago, I was working late at the office. Everyone else had gone home, and I was alone in the building, reviewing code for a new security protocol we were developing. The kind of quiet, focused work that I'd always loved before my life became complicated by betrayal and revenge and loss. My phone rang. Unknown number, Portland area code. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Silence on the other end, then breathing. Then finally, a voice I recognized. Jules, it's Michael. I need to talk to you about something. Something I should have told you a long time ago. My stomach dropped. What is it? Not over the phone. Can you meet me? Tomorrow?
Breakfast, that place we used to. Go. Michael, just tell me. Please, I need to do this in person. I owe you that much. I met him the next morning at the diner, where we'd had countless planning sessions back when Secure Haven was just getting started. Michael looked like he hadn't slept, dark circles under his eyes, his usual cheerful demeanour replaced by something that looked like guilt. I knew, he said without preamble, about Ryan and Sarah. I knew before you did. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. What? Emily told me, Ryan's ex-girlfriend. She called me a few months after they broke up, after you'd already moved to San Francisco. She wanted me to know why they'd really broken up, because Ryan was having an affair with Sarah and Emily had found out. And you didn't tell me? I didn't know what to do, Jules. Ryan was my boss. You were in San Francisco and I kept thinking maybe Emily was wrong. Maybe she was just bitter about the breakup. Maybe
I shouldn't get involved in something that messy. So you just let me walk around oblivious while my best friend fucked my wife. I'm sorry, God, I'm so sorry. I've been carrying this guilt for over a year, and I can't do it anymore. You deserve to know. You deserved to know before you had to find out the way you did. I sat there, processing this information, feeling old wounds tear open again. Why are you telling me this now? I finally asked. Because I saw what you did to Ryan, how you systematically destroyed him. And I keep thinking that if I'd told you earlier, maybe it wouldn't have gone that far. Maybe you could have confronted them, gotten a divorce, moved on with your life without having to burn everything down. Or maybe I would have destroyed them sooner. Yeah, maybe. Michael looked at me with something like fear in his eyes. Jules, I've been thinking about this a lot. What you did to Ryan, it was justified. He
deserved it. He betrayed you in every possible way, and you made sure he paid for it. But I can't help wondering if maybe it went too far, if maybe the revenge cost you more than the betrayal did. What do you mean? I mean, you're successful now, more successful than you ever were when Ryan was your partner, but you're alone. You don't trust anyone. You work 90 hours a week and go home to an empty house. You've built this fortress around yourself where nobody can hurt you, but nobody can reach you either. That's my choice. Is it? Or is it just what you became when you decided that destruction was the only way to protect yourself? I didn't have an answer to that. Michael reached across the table and put his hand on my arm. I'm not saying you shouldn't have gone after Ryan. I'm not saying he didn't deserve what you did to him. I'm just saying, at some point, you're going to have to decide whether you want to spend the rest of your life as the guy who won the war, or whether you want to build something new, something better than what you lost. I have built something new. Secure Haven is. I'm not talking about the company, Jules. I'm talking about your life. When's the last time you had a real conversation with someone that wasn't about work? When's the last time you let someone get close to you? When's the last time you felt something other than anger and suspicion? You need to hear this, even if you don't want to. Ryan and Sarah broke something in you. And then you took that broken piece and turned it into a weapon. But weapons are only useful if you're still fighting a war. And the war is over, Jules. You won. But you're still acting like you're under siege. We talked for another hour. Michael told me stories about things that had happened at the company, about people who cared about me and wanted to be my friend, but were too scared to reach out because I'd become so closed off. About a woman named Jennifer from our marketing team who had a crush on me, but didn't think I'd notice because I never seemed to see anything beyond code and security protocols. You're not Ryan, Michael said as we were getting ready to leave. You're nothing like him. You're decent and honest and brilliant, and you deserve to be happy, but you can't be happy as long as you're still carrying around all this anger and hurt and need for control. I don't know how to let it go. Maybe start by forgiving yourself, for trusting them, for not seeing it sooner, for being human enough to be hurt by people you loved. I've been thinking a lot about what Michael said, about whether my revenge was worth it, about whether I destroyed Ryan because it was necessary or because I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't weak. The truth is, I don't know. I don't regret exposing Ryan's fraud and protecting the company. Those were the right things to do, and I'd do them again without hesitation. The company and our clients deserve to be protected from someone who was violating their trust. But the rest of it, the systematic destruction of his reputation, the quiet campaign to make sure he could never work in tech again, the cold satisfaction I felt watching him lose everything, I'm not sure about that. Maybe it was justice. Maybe it was just cruelty dressed up as justice. Ryan didn't just lose his job, he lost his career, his reputation, his future. He'll probably never work in technology again, not in any meaningful way. He'll spend the rest of his life explaining to potential employers why there's a gap in his resume, why his last position ended in disgrace, why nobody from his past will give him a reference. I did that to him. Not because I had to, but because I could, because I had the skills and the evidence and the cold determination to make sure he paid for every moment of the betrayal. And Sarah, she came out of it better than Ryan did, but not by much. Her reputation in the San Francisco tech scene is tainted by association with the scandal. People know she had an affair with her husband's business partner, that she was part of a plan to force me out of the company. It follows her everywhere. They both learned that betrayal has consequences. They both paid a price that will shadow them for the rest of their lives. And me, I learned that revenge is a poison you drink hoping the other person will die. It did damage Ryan and Sarah, but it also damaged me in ways I'm only beginning to understand. Today is the 2-year anniversary of the board meeting where I exposed Ryan's betrayal. 2 years since I destroyed my former best friend and ended my marriage. 2 years since I chose vengeance over forgiveness, destruction over healing. Secure Haven is worth $300 million now. We're one of the fastest growing cybersecurity companies in the country. My personal net worth is somewhere north of $40 million. I've achieved more financial success than I ever dreamed possible. But I'm sitting alone in my house, looking out at the Portland skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows, and I can't remember the last time I felt truly happy. I thought winning would feel different. I thought destroying the people who betrayed me would bring some kind of closure, some sense of justice and completion. But it didn't. It just left me empty and suspicious and unable to trust anyone. Michael was right. I won the war, but I lost something more important in the process. I lost the ability to be vulnerable, to let people in, to believe that not everyone is secretly plotting to betray me. I built this fortress to protect myself, and now I'm trapped inside it. Last night, I did something I haven't done in 2 years. I went to a social event that wasn't related to work. A gallery opening that Claire had invited me 2 months ago, something I'd normally ignore or make an excuse to skip. I went, I talked to people, I tried to be present and engaged instead of analyzing every conversation for hidden motives or potential threats. And I met someone. Her name is Emma. She's an architect, the regular kind, not the digital kind. She designs buildings, thinks about space and light and how people move through physical structures. We started talking because she made a joke about my name. Julian, the cloud architect, meets Emma, the actual architect. This feels like the setup to a terrible punchline. We talked for 2 hours about design and security and the different ways we think about building things that last, about Portland and art and the strange loneliness of being successful in your career while your personal life falls apart. I didn't tell her about Ryan or Sarah or the revenge. I just talked about my work, my interests, my dog Ada. And she told me about her projects, her frustrations with clients who want buildings that defy physics, her dream of designing a museum someday. It was the first time in 2 years I'd had a conversation that felt normal, that didn't feel weighted down by suspicion and hurt, and the need to maintain control. When the gallery was closing and we were getting ready to leave, she asked if I'd like to get coffee sometime. I said yes. I don't know what happens next. Maybe I'll fuck this up too. Maybe I'm too broken to have a normal relationship ever again. Maybe the damage Ryan and Sarah did and the damage I did to myself in response is permanent. But I'm going to try. Because Michael was right. The war is over. I won, but winning didn't give me back what I lost. It just proved that I could survive betrayal and come out the other side with everything I'd built intact. Now I need to figure out if I can do the harder thing, not just survive, but actually heal. Not just win, but build something new that's worth more than what I destroyed. Ryan took my wife and tried to take my company. I took his career and his reputation and his future. We both thought we were fighting for something important, that winning would make us whole. We were both wrong. It's been 3 months since that gallery opening. 3 months since I started trying to be something other than the guy who destroyed his best friend. Emma and I have been on 14 dates. She knows about the betrayal now. I told her on our 5th date, figuring she deserved to know why I was so guarded, so suspicious, so fucking damaged. She listened without judgment, asked thoughtful questions, and then said something that I keep coming back to. What happened to you was horrible. But at some point, you're going to have to decide whether you want to spend the rest of your life as the victim of their betrayal, or whether you want to move forward as the person you choose to be now. I'm trying to be that person, the one who moves forward, the one who doesn't see relationship as a potential betrayal waiting to happen. It's hard, harder than destroying Ryan was, harder than building Secure Haven from scratch. because it requires vulnerability and trust, two things I'd systematically eliminated from my life. But I'm trying. Last week I got another email. This one wasn't from Ryan, it was from Sarah. Jules, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I wanted you to know that I saw your company's IPO announcement, and I'm happy for you, and you built something incredible, and you did it despite everything that happened. I also wanted to say that I've been in therapy for the past year, working through everything that happened, and my therapist helped me understand that what Ryan and I did to you wasn't about you at all. It was about our own insecurities and selfishness and cowardice. You weren't distant because you didn't love me. You were building something important. And instead of supporting you, I convinced myself that I deserved more attention and excitement. Instead of talking to you about feeling lonely, I had an affair with your best friend. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect a response. I just wanted you to know that I understand now how badly we hurt you. And I'm sorry. Not in a performative way, not to make myself feel better, but genuinely sorry for the pain we caused and the trust we destroyed. I hope you're well. I hope you found happiness, Sarah. I've read that email probably 50 times. Part of me wants to respond, wants to tell her that I'm working on forgiveness, that I'm trying to move past the anger and hurt. Another part of me wants to ignore it completely, to let her sit with her guilt the way I sat with my pain for so long. Emma thinks I should respond. She thinks forgiveness isn't about absolving Sarah and Ryan of what they did. It's about releasing myself from the weight of carrying around all that resentment and pain. You
don't have to be friends with them, she said. You don't even have to like them. But you can acknowledge that they're human beings who made terrible choices and are now living with the consequences. And then you can let it go and move forward with your life. Maybe she's right. Maybe forgiveness isn't about them at all. Maybe it's about me choosing to stop defining myself by what they did to me. Today I'm writing a response to Sarah's email. I don't know if I'll send it, but I'm writing it anyway. Sarah, thank you for your email. I appreciate your honesty about therapy and what you've learned about yourself. You're right that I haven't forgiven you or Ryan. I don't know if I ever will completely. What you did caused real damage, not just to our marriage, but to my ability to trust people, to believe in the goodness of relationships, to let myself be vulnerable. But I'm working on it. I'm trying to build a life that isn't defined by your betrayal. I'm trying to be someone who can trust again, who can love again, who can believe that not everyone is secretly plotting to hurt me. It's hard. Some days I'm successful. Some days I still wake up angry about everything that happened. But I'm trying, and that's more than I could say a year ago. I don't know if this changes anything between us. I don't think we'll ever be friends again. Too much has happened. Too much trust has been destroyed. But maybe we can exist in the same universe without actively hating each other. That feels like progress. Jules, I might send it, I might delete it. But writing it felt like something. Like acknowledgement that the rage and need for revenge that consumed me for so long doesn't have to define the rest of my life. 3 years after the betrayal, 3 years after I burned down my old life and built something new from the ashes, Secure Haven went public at a valuation of $1.2 billion. I'm now worth more than $100 million on paper. We've opened offices in 4 cities. We've won industry awards for innovation and security. We're exactly what Ryan and I dreamed about building in those early days at the hotel bar in Seattle. But he's not here to see it. And honestly, that doesn't give me the satisfaction I thought it would. Emma and I got married last month. Small ceremony, just close friends and her family. Ada was the ring bearer, Emma insisted, and it was ridiculous and perfect. We're buying a house together in the West Hills, with room for the family we're planning to start next year. I'm happy. Genuinely, surprisingly happy, in a way I didn't think was possible 3 years ago. The fortress I built around myself is still there, but Emma has found ways in. She's patient with my moments of suspicion, gentle when I pull away, firm when I need to be called out on my bullshit. You're not that broken, she told me once, when I was spiraling about whether I was capable of being a good husband. You're just someone who got hurt badly and learned to protect yourself, but you're choosing to be vulnerable again. That's not broken. That's brave. Last month, I ran into Ryan at a conference in Portland. We haven't spoken in 3 years, not since the board meeting where I exposed everything and watched his career implode. He looked older, greyer. The confident, charismatic person I'd known had been replaced by someone more cautious, more guarded, like he'd learned some of the same lessons I'd learned about how badly people can hurt you. Jules, he said when he saw me. Just my name, nothing else. Ryan! We stood there in awkward silence for a long moment. You look good, he finally said. Happy. I am. You? Getting there, slowly. He paused.
I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I'm glad you're doing well. What I did to you, to us, it was unforgivable. But you deserved to win. You
deserved for everything to work out. Thanks. And I'm sorry. I know I've said that before, but I need you to know that I understand now what I destroyed. Not just your trust, but the best friendship I ever had. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw genuine remorse. Not the performative kind, not the self-serving kind, but real understanding of what he'd done and why it was wrong. I'm sorry too, I said, and meant it. For what I did to your career. For making sure you couldn't work in tech again. For taking my anger at the betrayal and turning it into a weapon that destroyed everything you'd built. I deserved it. Maybe. But I should have been better than that. I should have exposed what you did and then moved on, not dedicated months of my life to systematically destroying you. We talked for a few more minutes. About where he was working now, a small consulting firm in Austin. Nothing glamorous, but honest work. About how
He'd been in therapy too, working through why he'd sabotaged the best things in his life. About how he hoped someday to rebuild his reputation, not to what it was, but to something he could be proud of. I don't expect us to be friends again, Ryan said as we were parting ways. I don't even think that's possible. But maybe someday we can think about each other without all this pain and anger. Maybe someday we can remember the good parts too. Maybe, I agreed. I told Emma about running into Ryan, about our conversation, about how I'd felt. Not forgiveness exactly, but something softer than hatred. Something closer to acceptance. Does that make me weak? I asked. That I don't want to hate him anymore? No, she said. It makes you human. And it means you're healing. I did terrible things to him, Emma. I destroyed his career. I made sure he could never work in tech again. I took my hurt and turned it into a weapon. You did. And that wasn't okay, but you also stopped someone who was defrauding your company and putting your clients at risk. You protected something you'd built. It wasn't all revenge. Some of it was justice. How do you know where one ends and the other begins? I don't think you can always tell. I think sometimes justice and revenge look the same from the outside. The difference is in why you're doing it and how it makes you feel after. I don't feel good about it, about what I did to him. Good. That means you still have a conscience. That means you're not the monster you were afraid you'd become. This morning, I received an email from Thomas Greenberg, the VC who'd been part of Secure Haven's board during the confrontation with Ryan. I haven't talked to him much since the company went public. He sold his stake and moved on to other investments. His email was short. Julian, I've been thinking about what happened with Ryan 3 years ago.
about the board meeting and everything that came after. At the time, I thought you were doing what needed to be done, protecting the company, exposing fraud, making sure someone who'd violated trust couldn't do it again. And you were doing all of that. But I've been in this industry for 30 years and I've seen a lot of betrayals and a lot of revenge. What you did to Ryan was exceptional, thorough, methodical, devastating. You didn't just stop him from hurting you again. You made sure he couldn't hurt anyone again. I'm not saying that was wrong. Ryan did everything you accused him of and deserved to face consequences. But I wonder if maybe you deserve to think about the cost of that revenge, not just what it cost him, but what it cost you to become the kind of person who could execute that kind of destruction. I see you at industry events sometimes. You're successful beyond what most founders ever achieve, but you carry something heavy with you, a weight that I don't think success can lift. I hope you find a way to put it down. Thomas, I'm still processing that email, still trying to figure out if Thomas is right, if the cost of my revenge was higher than the value of justice. I think maybe it was. I think maybe I could have exposed Ryan's fraud and protected the company without spending months systematically destroying every aspect of his professional life. I think maybe I could have drawn a line between justice and vengeance, stayed on the right side of it. But I didn't. I crossed that line and kept going because I was hurt and angry and needed to prove to myself that I wasn't weak, that I could fight back, that betrayal would be punished completely and permanently. And in doing that, I became someone I'm not entirely proud of. Last week, I wrote Ryan an email. I didn't plan to. It just came out one night when I couldn't sleep, when I was thinking about everything that had happened and everything I'd done. Ryan, I've been thinking about our conversation at the conference, about what we both did and what we both lost. I need you to know that I'm sorry, not for exposing your fraud or protecting the company. I'd do those things again without hesitation. But for the rest of it, for making sure you couldn't work in tech again, for the systematic campaign to destroy your reputation, for taking my hurt and turning it into a weapon. You betrayed me in the worst possible way.
You stole my wife and tried to steal my company. What you did was unforgivable, and the consequences you faced were partly your own making. But I made those consequences worse than they needed to be. I went beyond justice into revenge. I wanted you to suffer the way I'd suffered, and I succeeded. But succeeding at revenge didn't make me feel better. It just made me feel empty and bitter and less like the person I wanted to be. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking to rebuild our friendship. I just wanted you to know that I understand now that what I did went too far. That justice and revenge aren't the same thing, even when they look similar from the outside. I hope you're building a good life in Austin. I hope you found some peace. Jules. I sent it before I could second-guess myself. Ryan responded 2 days later. Jules, thank you for your email. I don't know that either of us deserves forgiveness for what we did to each other, but I appreciate the acknowledgement. You're right, that there's a difference between justice and revenge. I learnt that the hard way over the past 3 years, watching every door close in my face, seeing my career reduced to nothing, understanding that I destroyed everything good in my life for a moment of weakness. But here's what I've learned. The consequences you created for me, as brutal as they were, forced me to confront who I'd become. They forced me to stop making excuses and start doing the hard work of becoming a better person. I'm not grateful for what you did. I wouldn't wish that kind of professional destruction on anyone. But I am grateful that it stopped me from continuing down a path that would have led to more betrayals and more pain for everyone around me. So maybe there's a version of this story where what we both did, the betrayal and the revenge, were necessary for us to become who we needed to be. Maybe we both had to destroy each other to learn how to build something better. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's the only way I've found to make peace with everything that happened. Ryan, today I'm sitting in my home office, looking out at the Portland skyline, thinking about architecture and destruction, and the fine line between them. I spent my career building systems designed to withstand attacks, to survive failures, to maintain integrity even when parts of them were compromised. I thought about security in terms of defense and protection and control, but I failed to understand that the stronger security comes from resilience, not from walls. From the ability to heal and adapt and grow, not from the ability to destroy threats before they can hurt you. Ryan and Sarah broke me. They shattered my trust and my marriage and my confidence in my own judgment. They showed me that the people you love most can also hurt you worst. And I responded by becoming everything I'd never wanted to be: cold, calculating, ruthless. I took the skills I'd used to build and protect, and I weaponized them to destroy. It worked. I won. I saved my company and punished the people who betrayed me. But the cost was high. The cost was becoming someone who valued control over connection, who saw vulnerability as weakness, who believed that the only way to be safe was to be alone. Emma is helping me unlearn that. Every day, she shows me that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the only way to build something real. That trust isn't naive. It's the foundation of every meaningful relationship. That being hurt doesn't mean you need to become someone who can't be hurt again. It's a slow process. Some days I still catch myself analyzing her words for hidden meanings, looking for signs of betrayal, maintaining emotional distance just in case. But I'm getting better at recognizing when I'm doing it and choosing a different path. This morning, I woke up next to Emma in our new house. Ada was sleeping at the foot of the bed, snoring softly. Sunlight was streaming through the windows, painting everything gold. And I realized something. I'm happy. Not in spite of everything that happened with Ryan and Sarah, but because of it. Because their betrayal forced me to rebuild myself from the ground up. Because the revenge I took taught me the limits of control and the cost of bitterness. Because losing everything showed me what really matters and what's just noise. Secure haven is successful, but it's not what makes me happy. Having money is nice, but it's not what makes me whole. Destroying Ryan's career felt satisfying in the moment, but it's not what gives my life meaning. What makes me happy is this: waking up next to someone who knows everything about me, all the damage and bitterness and paranoia, and chooses to love me anyway. Building a life based on trust instead of control. Allowing myself to be vulnerable even though I know it could lead to pain. Ryan and Sarah taught me that people can betray you, but Emma is teaching me that they can also choose not to. The trust is a choice you make every day, not a fortress you build once and then defend forever. I never planned to write this all down. It just started happening one night when I couldn't sleep, when the weight of everything I'd done and everything that had been done to me felt too heavy to carry alone. Now, Looking back at thousands of words about betrayal and revenge and the slow process of healing, I realized this wasn't really about Ryan and Sarah at all. It was about me learning that I'm more than what happened to me, that I'm more than the sum of my victories and my vengeance, that I get to choose every day who I want to be, the person who destroys his enemies completely, or the person who builds something worth more than what he lost. Some days I still think about what I did to Ryan, about whether it was justice or just cruelty dressed up as righteousness, about whether I crossed a line I shouldn't have crossed. And the truth is, I don't know. Maybe I never will. But what I do know is this. Revenge is a zero-sum game. It's about making sure the other person loses at least as much as you did. And even when you win, even when you destroy them completely, you're still left standing in the ruins of what used to be. Justice is different. Justice is about protecting others, about making sure the damage stops, about creating accountability without creating more pain than necessary. I started with justice and ended with revenge, and I'm still paying the price for that choice, not in my bank account or my professional success, but in the work I have to do every day to remember how to trust, how to love, how to let people in. 2 months ago, Ryan sent me a final email. Just 3 words. Thank you. Truly. I don't know exactly what he was thanking me for. Maybe for the wake-up call that forced him to rebuild his life. Maybe for finally acknowledging that I'd gone too far. Maybe just for releasing him from the weight of our mutual hatred. I responded with 3 words of my own. You're welcome. Forgiven. I meant it. Not because what he did was okay. Not because I've forgotten the betrayal or the pain, but because holding on to that anger and hurt was costing me more than it was worth. Because forgiveness isn't about absolving him, it's about freeing myself, because I'm choosing to be someone who builds instead of someone who destroys. Next week, Emma and I are flying to Seattle for a conference. It's the same conference where Ryan and I met 7 years ago, where everything began. Secure Haven is the keynote sponsor this year, and I'm giving the opening address. I've been thinking about what to say, about how to talk about security and architecture and building systems that last without letting my personal story bleed through into professional advice. But maybe that's the wrong approach. Maybe the story of betrayal and revenge and healing is exactly what people need to hear. Not because it's inspiring or uplifting, but because it's true. Because the same principles that apply to digital security apply to life. You can build the strongest fortress in the world, but if you're trapped inside it alone, what's the point? You can defend against every threat, but if you're so focused on defense that you never open yourself up to connection, you're just surviving, not living. Real security doesn't come from control. It comes from resilience, from building systems and lives that can absorb damage and heal and grow stronger. From trusting that even if you get hurt, even if you get betrayed, you have the strength to recover and rebuild. I'm finishing this story on a Sunday morning in my home office, with Emma making breakfast in the kitchen and Ada begging for scraps. In a few hours, we'll meet some friends for brunch. Real friends, people I've let past my defences, people who know my story and chose to stick around anyway. Tomorrow, I'll go back to work. Back to building security systems, protecting clients, growing Secure Haven into something even bigger than what Ryan and I originally envisioned. But today, I'm just going to be present. To enjoy this moment, this life, this hard-won peace I've found. Ryan and Sarah broke something in me 3 years ago. They shattered my trust and my marriage and my certainty about who I was and what I was building. And I responded by breaking them right back, by proving that I could be just as ruthless and calculating as they were, manipulative and selfish. We all paid a price for that mutual destruction. We all lost parts of ourselves that we'll never get back. But we're all still here. Still breathing, still building, still learning how to be better than our worst moments. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's what healing looks like. Not forgetting what happened, not pretending the scars aren't there, but choosing every day to move forward anyway. To build instead of destroy. To trust instead of control. To live instead of just surviving. Ryan stole my wife and tried to steal my company. I stole his career and his reputation. We both learned that revenge is a poison that damages everyone it touches. And now we're both learning, slowly, painfully, how to be human again, how to build lives worth more than what we destroyed, how to choose connection over control, vulnerability over vengeance, healing over hatred. It's not a perfect ending. It's not even really an ending at all. Just a pause in the middle of an ongoing story that's still being written. But it's mine. And for the first time in 3 years, that feels like enough. The architecture of ruin, it turns out, is simple. You take something beautiful and systematically dismantle it piece by piece until nothing remains but rubble and regret. But the architecture of healing is more complex. You take the rubble and regret, and you build something new. Not the same as what you lost, you can never rebuild that, but something different. Something that carries the scars of what came before but isn't defined by them. I built a fortress to protect myself from ever being hurt again. Now I'm learning to build a home instead. It's harder, scarier, more vulnerable to attack, but it's also warm and full of light and love. And that, I've finally learned, is the only security worth
Having.